That was the first look we got at Tears of the Kingdom. And from this moment up to its release, Breath of the Wild 2, as it was called, was my most anticipated game of all time. I couldn't wait to know what had happened to the Guardians, the Sheikah, the Divine Beasts, one of which had apparently stopped working, if you remember that. What a cliffhanger, right? And as we got closer to release, expectations grew. Oh man, Link and Zelda going together underground. Ganondorf is back. It's a sequel to my favorite game of all time. And yeah, as we know now, this is no sequel to Breath of the Wild. This is no Breath of the Wild 2. This is Tears of the Kingdom. And it delivers on its vision of an uncompromising freedom-first Zelda experience better than Breath of the Wild ever could. But was it worth it? To sacrifice rewarding dungeons? To make the story an absolute mess? So Link could have the power of a god in his fingertips to bend physics to our will, unlimited puzzle-solving options, unlimited ways to travel, unlimited ways to torture innocent children. And yet, this game left me with more conflicting feelings than any other Zelda game I've played, and for every amazing moment right around the corner, there was something to frustrate me. Let's start from the beginning. Tears of the Kingdom starts the sequence very reminiscent of its first reveal trailer. Link and Zelda, years after the events of Breath of the Wild, find themselves exploring the tunnels and caverns below Hyrule Castle. When comparing this to the Breath of the Wild intro sequence, this is much more linear. It is a solid 10 minutes of cutscenes and dialogue right at the start of the game, a departure from Breath of the Wild's open-ended design. Which is weird, considering this game does even less for making a linear story than Breath of the Wild did, and it seems to care much more about being a sandbox experience rather than an actual action RPG. But we'll get to that later. We keep going down even deeper below Hyrule Castle's caverns until we find this strange room with what seems to be a green glow coming out of a hand. We need to get closer to investigate. After uncovering the Demon King's decaying body, the mysterious hand holding him in place lets go, giving Zelda a shiny new tear-shaped stone, and Link third-degree gloom burns and a traumatic near-death experience.
Link!
Was that the sword that seals the darkness? The blade that shatters so easily against my power cannot save you from me.
Finally! Having a voice-acted Ganondorf in the series has done wonders for his character. This is the most threatening and scary Ganondorf in any Zelda game in my opinion. And after raising Hyrule Castle up to the skies because that's really cool and powerful. Zelda falls down a hole, but is saved by the stone she grabbed, and Link falls down a hole, but is saved by the... Bro, trim your nails. Huh, much better. We wake up, pick up our Master Sword, or what's left of it anyway, jump, jump, jump. Give Link his femboy skirt, walk outside. This is the most beautiful game ever made. This game looks like crap. Welcome to Tears of the Kingdom. Following a more linear approach to world design, the Great Sky Island has us going first to the Temple of Time, talking to the furry, being pointed directly at a shrine, and then proceeding to go from shrine to shrine until we've circled around the island and are brought right back here to the Temple of Time again.
That just sounds very similar to the Great Plateau, actually.
No, it's not. In the Great Plateau, you're presented with an open world. The game points you at a shrine, sure, but the order you choose to do these isn't actually locked behind a linear set of challenges. You can head to the cold area first, maybe go get the shrine by some old ruins, climb a mountain for a shrine. I mean, you could climb it, but you can also easily reach it from above as well if you just chose to go a different way earlier. Tears of the Kingdom's Great Sky Island, on the other hand, is a linear tutorial, masquerading as an open-ended Breath of the Wild style tutorial. In Breath of the Wild, if you reach a challenge you're not ready for, you can turn around. There's other places to go. If you need to get around the river, for example, you can do it in multiple different ways. Hell, you're not actually even required to cross it. You can just find a way to ignore it completely. Now, in Tears of the Kingdom, we have a big river in front of us. No way to proceed without getting through. We have an axe right here. We just got the ability from the previous dungeon. Glue, glue, boom. We have a boat. We made it! But we required an ability from a previous shrine to do so, so clearly there's an order to things. And it's very linear, except that's what you thought, because if you go to the far left side, you can drop down a secret passageway. Now we just need to keep moving forward and... Oh. Big rock. We don't have fuse yet. We're getting that after this river. There's no bomb flowers before here? Nope, just stuck. And the funniest part is, get past the river the intended way, right after the shrine there's a big cave entrance. Now you have fuse, you break open the rocks and use the path to... go back. There's no reason to go back in this island. Moving forward is always the correct way. The shrine is that way. When you reach it, it eats you right back to the Temple of Time anyway. Why is this here? And the Great Sky Island is filled with weird decisions like these. There's barely any way to make your own path. The game made the path for you, you just have to follow it. A departure from Breath of the Wild's open-ended design, which is weird considering this game does even less for making a linear story than Breath of the Wild did, and it seems to care much more about being a sandbox than an action RPG and... Huh. What brings you here today, Mr. Zelda series? I don't know, Dr. Paws. Look, Mr. Paws, I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore. I was a linear action RPG. I spawned a whole genre of games. I have the highest rated game of all time in my franchise. But I've been doing this for so long, I just wasn't feeling it anymore, you know? It's like I wasn't myself. Change is good. You shouldn't need to feel stuck to expectations of the past. Be yourself. Well, I was myself, Doc. I tried. I did change. A whole new world I came up with. Open and free, no restrictions of old. Just pure, unadulterated adventure. It felt like what I was always supposed to be. Well, it seems you have that figured out then. What is it that is troubling you? Well, it's just that I made a sequel. I followed this new direction. It was supposed to elevate action-adventure even further. A true, open-world masterpiece. But I kinda missed the old days, you know? Exploring a big scary dungeon, story progression, the lovable characters. So you decided to go back to your roots? No, I was going to get what made linear Zelda good and fuse it to this new style. Bring the best parts of myself together. I tried bringing new and improved dungeons, themed dungeons. Big areas to explore, an even bigger and freer world. A story so touching and emotional that for sure this would be a true open world masterpiece. And yet, it's different this time. All this unrestricted freedom? How can I design a rewarding puzzle challenge when the systems in place make it so easy to cheat through any possible intended solutions? I brought a good story, but how can I assure the players will listen to it in the way I wanted them to? The way that makes sense. I just ended up with copy-pasted cutscenes and a plot that is heavily dependent on where you choose to go first. This freedom, it's hurting parts of the experience. Doesn't this newfound freedom come with its own set of positives? It does, don't get me wrong. I was finally able to perfect this new style of open world freedom. Make incredible machines possible through a physics system so advanced, it mirrors real life almost perfectly. I could dive from the very top of the highest sky island to the bottom of the depths without a single loading screen, all running on hardware that was outdated back when it was released almost a decade ago. It is my masterpiece. Just not how I thought it would be. It seems to me you're wrestling between genres. Do you want to be an open-world action-adventure game, where exploration and story lead the way to an immersive experience? Or an open-world sandbox, where the sheer number of possibilities means every challenge can be tackled countless different ways, making for a unique adventure to every player? I'm trying to do both. I love both styles. I want to please everyone. But I just don't think I can do it. You can't please everyone, you know. You have to be yourself. Do what you want to do. Just follow your heart. I just have to follow my heart. I can do that, yes. Thank you, Pause. I'll see you in 8 years for the next game. 8 years? 8 years? Wait. You didn't pay. Come back here. A cat needs to afford his catnip. This isn't covered under your health plan, you know. The story of Tears of the Kingdom is confused. With that little therapy segment, I was looking to convey this idea of confusion, because the game is struggling in the way it wants to present its content. I feel like Tears has one of the best Zelda game stories built into it, but the delivery is hurting it a lot. I think it's clear at this point that Tears didn't bother being a sequel to Breath of the Wild. So even disregarding all the nonsensical decisions made between games, like having some characters recognize Link and then other main game characters just don't for some reason, despite Breath of the Wild's Link having most likely met them, despite all that, the world, it still makes no sense. Okay, so, we are given indication that Link and Zelda are living together in Hateno Village. We are shown that they basically go everywhere together. One would assume that they are working, well, together a lot of the time. So why do most characters you meet love to emphasize the work Zelda has done to restore civilization, but none of them know Link? Hero of legend, savior of Hyrule. Not even a decade ago he saved civilization from calamity and no one gives a crap? Now I'd love to believe that Link just doesn't like the spotlight and has remained at home acting as a maid for the past 7 years, but even then, it's just sad to see this world we've explored once before not evolving with the player. And I know they probably did this so Tears of the Kingdom would still work as a starting point, not requiring players to play Breath of the Wild to understand the story, but they already go to such lengths to make sure that the player gets what's going on, and these characters usually being NPCs not tied to the main story, it would just make sense for them to at least acknowledge Link's past achievements. I doubt that would have hurt the new player's experience much at all. This decision just doesn't make sense to me, and it ends up hurting the world's cohesiveness more than anything. Now moving on to the story itself, and wow. Where do I even begin? I could mention how every dungeon ends with the same repeated cutscene, and how these cutscenes talk to the champion descendants directly, not Link. Or, sorry, the sage descendants, because the champions from Breath of the Wild, they're gone. They're sages now, even though both are pretty much interchangeable as far as the roles they play in game. Okay, the cutscenes talk to the sage descendants, not Link, even when Link already knows all the stuff being said, making the player sit through the exact same cutscene countless times just because Link has social anxiety and he can't verbally communicate to the people next to him that the Demon King Ganondorf is behind all this and he's using Zelda as his puppet! Or, I could mention how the memories have an order to them, and unlike Breath of the Wild's memories, going a different way and exploring the world at your own pace can severely harm the enjoyment you get from said memory cutscenes, especially when you already know Zelda is a faker and you can find that out yourself before Link even goes to the first dungeon. But everyone knows all this already. It's been complained about to no end in most critiques of this game. So I would like to talk about some things they could have done differently instead. A simple way to fix all the dungeon cutscenes being repeated would have to have them happen in a certain preset order. Go to Gerudo dungeon first, get cutscene number 1. Go to the Rito dungeon first instead, also get cutscene number 1. And then 2, and then 3, and then 4, slowly expanding your knowledge of the story and getting you more exposition and a better reward for clearing the dungeons.
Wouldn't that be impossible considering all the plot lines are pretty much the same? You're just asking for a complete revamp of the story at that point. Doesn't sound so simple to me.
No, even if we're keeping them all the way they are now, Link could simply arrive at the location, tell the characters what he knows up to that point, and instead of following Zelda to save her, maybe we're catching up to her to question her, or already know for a fact she's an imposter and are running after her to confront her. Just change the dialogue up a bit and you have yourself a story that's much less frustrating and makes sense to the player. All they would need to do then is simply change the 4 dungeon cutscenes, making them slowly work up to the battle against Ganondorf and how that led to sealing him away. Just not have all of them being the exact same thing. I mean, it was the worst choice they could have chosen, and I don't know why that's the way they decided to handle the story. And the same principle can be applied to the memories. Have them play at a preset order. No matter where you choose to go in the world, where you choose to explore, the storyline remains consistent in a way that doesn't spoil the player depending on where they choose to travel. And I know that to some this would hurt the game's freedom, because having a set-in-stone storyline means experiencing that story is far more of a linear process, but in my opinion, it makes the experience of exploring the world less frustrating while keeping all of the excitement of traveling to these regions, finding all the geoglyphs on your own through your own travels. That stays the same. All that's changing is the reward actually makes sense and it still rewards exploration, but now it also furthers story progression better. I genuinely do not believe it would have hurt what this game is going for. And I feel like the only reason it's not like this is because the Zelda team is in love with the idea of uncompromised freedom, making your own journey that is different from any other. Even if that journey turns out to be frustrating to some, to others, it will be pretty damn near perfect. I guess it's just the risks they're willing to take to ensure this unique experience. And with the interviews given since the game's release, and the almost demeaning way the team is referring to linear-styled gameplay and story, for better or for worse, this is the direction we're headed, and we are not looking back. Oh, and speaking of non-linear gameplay, it also plays its part on hurting Tears of the Kingdom story. The open-world nature of the game further hurts the story's impact related to its most emotional moment. Clearly, it is expected of you to do all 4 dungeons, then find the 5th dungeon, the Spirit Temple, so you can receive the knowledge that the game was building up to this point. That being, Zelda consumed the Secret Stone and became the Light Dragon, the ultimate sacrifice to save Hyrule and bring the Master Sword to Link in the future. However, having played through most of the game at this point and being to all regions of the map, it is not far-fetched to expect that the player, even if a little willing to explore outside the main story quest, will have found the huge in-your-face geoglyphs spread all over the map. All conveniently in reach of the nearest Skyview tower, by the way. Or maybe just decided to follow the questline given to you when you first meet Impa, and will have already discovered this fact out of order, making the entire sequence irrelevant. You could have also visited the Korok Forest at this point in your search for the Master Sword, or again, just out of curiosity. The game makes that area mysterious and enticing for a reason. But if you have found that, you have a quest marker pointed directly at the Master Sword, which happens to be on the Light Dragon. Yet another out-of-order sequence that breaks this emotional moment. A moment that the game clearly expects you to find in this exact order. Do the 4 main dungeons, find out about Puppet Zelda and Hyrule Castle, and then get told about the 5th dungeon. Find, complete it, experience the cutscenes and emotional revelations then, so only after that you go find the geoglyphs and the Master Sword. If that's the order you did things, all of these moments landed. Apart from the repeated cutscene crap, and Zelda being a fake is the most obvious thing ever, you just experienced a story that, despite its glaring flaws, was paced well, delivered through intense and well-made sequences, and a story that, with its implications of sacrifice, leaves a big impact on the player. I mean, have you seen this sequence? I'm not crying. You are. You just experienced a great Zelda story.
But that's linear. The story, it's not open-ended. It's a linear story. You have a set order you're supposed to follow. You can experience it in an open-ended type way, but that doesn't make sense. The story, it's not adaptive. It doesn't react to the world or change with it. It's linear. It's all linear. You're just experiencing things out of order. Why is it presented this way?
Now you see it, and that's the flaw with this approach. They are not willing to go all the way with the effort required to make a non-linear story function, but also unwilling to give us just a bit of that linearity back to make what they did create work within the game. Ugh, this was tough. I love this game, but the story was one of my biggest frustrations with it. At least this approach to design gave us an unforgettable experience in another part of the game that is actually truly revolutionary. I'm talking about the I adore the gameplay of Tears of the Kingdom to death. The Zelda team has worked countless hours to create the most in-depth and yet simple to understand physics system in all of gaming. The possibilities with the system are endless. You have already seen all the insane things people have built online. Everything from silly cartoony traps to a military air bomber. It's all possible by gluing sticks and stones and zonite tech together. It cannot be understated how incredible all this is, and that's just with one of Link's new abilities. With Fuse, suddenly every plant you come by and every new item you find is now possibly a weapon of mass destruction. With Ascend, you can explore deep into cave systems and just pop back up at the surface in a second, keeping the flow of gameplay engaging. Or completely break the game by holding a single rock. Yeah, the gameplay's awesome. But as most things in Tears of the Kingdom, it does not come without its negatives. It's an easily broken game. And it's part of the design, don't get me wrong. Just like in Breath of the Wild, this game can be difficult at the start, but once you found a couple good weapons and you collect a couple plants, you become a god amongst bokoblins. You're good to go. The game knows this, and it actively incentivizes it through its design. There is fun to be had in breaking intended game sequences, there is fun to be had in flying through the map with your hover bike. But it's kinda expected of you that if you want a balanced experience, don't use the tools given to you. Restrict yourself, because as we'll be seeing later when I talk about the dungeons and exploration on the game, actively refusing to engage with the game's systems helps make the experience better in a lot of ways. But focusing solely on the gameplay side of things right now, it's really fun! All the building blocks of a fantastic sandbox experience are right here and better than ever. While replaying the game, I found myself smiling whenever a stupid contraption would work, or when I thought I had to do something a certain way, just to be reminded that nope, I can make anything work if I'm petty enough. Take that, game, I am the best. And it was all planned from the start. Everything from the shrines to the sky islands above to the depths below, the quests, the dungeons, all of it. All can be resolved just by using the game's systems to their fullest. Shame they ruined one of the best gameplay aspects of Breath of the Wild, Link's champion abilities. Now replaced by useless, annoying Sage ability power-ups that I just disable the moment the game lets me. I just don't like having these spirits follow me around everywhere. It takes away from the adventure. It doesn't make me feel like I'm getting stronger and more powerful. It makes me feel like I have some buddies along with me that possess abilities that are almost useless most of the time. I do have to mention though, that one item is without a shadow of a doubt better than anything else in the whole game. One item by itself can solve 95% of situations thrown at you. One item responsible for making entire main game sequences nothing but a joke. It's the best item in Tears of the Kingdom, it's the rocket! You know what they say, have a problem big or small, just use a rocket and it'll be gone! A problem requires a rocket, an even bigger problem requires even more rockets! No one is safe, no dungeon, no sky island, no shrine. With a rocket strapped onto your shield, they'll be done in no time. No puzzles, no difficulty, no thought behind those eyes. Just use a rocket and watch as the challenge flies by! Bye bye intended puzzle sequences. Bye bye challenging enemies. The true price of freedom shows itself. Unrestricted, game-breaking rockets. And I don't know how to feel about them. On one hand, they devalue what the game is going for. Why build a bridge? That takes so long to get done. Just use a rocket. Why make a car or a boat? Just use a rocket. Why insist on slow fans? Just use a rocket, it's right there. Kill a couple constructs along the way and the gotcha machine thingy will make sure you have enough to last a lifetime.
You could just not use them, you know?
But on the other hand, they're also fun to use. It adds to the gameplay. This is true freedom. You could just not use them if they bother you, but if the game is to be critiqued, if a game's objective is to give us true freedom, I'm gonna use everything in it. I don't want to restrict myself. It's not the point of the experience, it's not what they were going for. I don't want to go back to the days of old, but this is a bit much. Would a more careful approach really hurt freedom? I mean, we would still be free to do whatever we wanted if rockets were just balanced. I don't think my criticism is invalid because I could just not use it. It's in the game, it was put there deliberately. It is a part of the game. I will use it to its fullest and judge my experience accordingly. If I found through my own gameplay that one item is better than anything else, I'm going to take advantage of it. I'd be dumb not to. That being said, the game is so fun. Even when you're just solving everything with a rocket and some berries or whatever, it makes you feel powerful. You've mastered the game and can do with it as you please. I just wish it wasn't so easy to get to this point. To feel this way. It's hard to feel like this is an adventure in a living, breathing world where I'm trying to get by and discover how to defeat the great evil when I'm a god capable of killing everything without it even seeing me. And on top of that, Tears of the Kingdom missed the mark on what to me was the best, most important part of open world Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom fumbled where its predecessor had succeeded so much. Tears of the Kingdom took Breath of the Wild's exploration, multiplied it tenfold, and shoved it up its ass! I had my problems with the way they presented the story. I had my problems with the balancing of the gameplay. But nothing comes even close to the utter disappointment I felt when exploring the world of Tears of the Kingdom. And in what may be the harshest part of this critique, I just can't not say this. Tears of the Kingdom's exploration is not as rewarding, it's not as polished, and it is a straight up step down from Breath of the Wild. And there's a clear reason why. In their quest for making the game a sandbox paradise full of tools and creative gameplay ideas, they gave up on cohesion. And I'm not talking about the fact they reused Breath of the Wild's overworld map, that's not the problem. Far from it actually, the overworld is still the best part of exploration. What is the problem is that the new world they introduced us to does not feel like a real place. It doesn't feel like a world that was ever lived in or served a purpose. It doesn't feel like a world that had as much love and care put into it, unlike the world carried over from Breath of the Wild. The new content is all cookie cutter, it's gamey, and forgive me lord, it's Ubisoft-ish open world content. This lack of cohesive world design is why these feelings have manifested so significantly in my experience. For example, let's go take a look at the new Sky Islands, all over the trailer material hyped up as a major part of the experience. Let's see what lies in store. They're the same. Variations of the same thing, they're all the same. You go up, you see the big launch stone in the middle, you see a shrine you can take a crystal to sometimes. There's like 3 different layouts for taking these crystals. Island, boss, a spinny thingy. These are different places, by the way. Ugh.
But Breath of the Wild's world had the same kind of stuff. Shrines were everywhere in that game, and they were less unique. You had like 30 combat shrines. That's repeated content.
Yes, it is, but that's inside the confines of a shrine. You knew what to expect. They were the rewards for exploration, not the exploration itself. The Sky Islands are the new exploration. They are the new world. and all you get are repeated islands. I can count in one hand the unique islands in this game. They're all just the same D-pad looking layout over and over again. If you're lucky, you get a ball too. Heck, stack 3 D-pads on top of each other, put a ball next to it, boom! World design. And the rewards for exploring these copy-pasted islands? Sage ability power-ups, which we've established are kinda useless. You also get shrines. Cool reward. Expected, but cool. Shame most of them are just blessings and they took what was supposed to be the inside of the shrine and made that the open world. We also have treasure maps with an X marking a map leading me to a treasure hunt in another world of the game? That's exciting. Let's check out the depths. Mine, Yiga, mine, Grove, mine. It's just copy-pasted content. Again. Ugh. The first time I descended to the depths and I saw my map empty out, just to go get a light route, having it light up like nothing of the map, I thought to myself, yes, this is awesome! And my first 5 hours or so down there, figuring out how to light the place with fruits, fighting tougher enemies, getting to the central mine, the fight against Master Koga. I loved all of it. But it didn't last long before the creeping realization that, oh no, it's the Sky Islands again. It's not a world made to be organically explored, it's a world made to be played with. A world to fool around in with the countless different abilities and items given to you, not a world to thoroughly explore every inch hoping to find interesting stories to tell. Because apart from the main story quest dungeon that's down here, the central mine quest, and the Master Koga fights, what is there to be found down here, really? The Colosseums are pretty cool. The labyrinths have segments down here. They're all the same. Give you useless loot. Oh, yes! The maps, of course! What are all these X's leading to? Breath of the Wild? DLC armor? Apart from one new set, it's all old reused armor and weapons that are no more than fun, cool Easter eggs and nods to past games. Not the main reward for exploring a huge empty underground. You'll fuse the weapons away anyway. Oh yeah, the Yiga hideouts. Of course, those must have something interesting. They're all the same, you just fly above, arrow, gone. Same exact building every time, same exact prize every time. I have not used these once my first time around. And when I played this game on release, I did everything. Every cave, every light route, every shrine, just not the Koroks, because I still haven't gone fully insane yet, surprisingly. And I never felt like using these. They are useless. Back up we go. The overworld. This is where 70% of the adventure still takes place. Same locales you're used to, but with a fresh new set of ideas to mix things up. And yeah, this is where the development time went to. Kakariko is experiencing a tourism boom with ancient rings falling around the village. Hateno's caught up with a culture war, politics, and election, but unlike real life, everyone gets along in the end. You can also get pizza, so this is an objective improvement over Breath of the Wild. You also have an expanded Tarrey town with the best soundtrack for any village in the game. No, this is not an opinion, this is objective fact. A racetrack, a monster display, unaffordable housing market. Tarreytown has all a town needs to have in the modern day, and I just love the place. It's also something you helped create in Breath of the Wild. Yes, they did ignore critical aspects of Breath of the Wild for no reason while making the town, which just makes its existence weird. What do you mean you don't know me? You built a house for me. The house was housing the kingdom's princess. I was there at Hudson's marriage, right next to you. You know, sure, Tears of the Kingdom's just silly like that. It doesn't take away much from revisiting the town, which I was happy to do with all the new content added. Now, to keep the positivity going in this overly critical video, here are some highlights of exploration that made me fall in love with this version of Hyrule all over again. exploring the Royal Secret Passage, having found it through Hyrule Castle, adventuring my way through the passageways, unlocking armor and tons of resources, while using my weapons to break open tunnels, throwing all my bombs at what felt like an infinite barrage of stone, being rewarded with a boss fight, the ability to change hearts for stamina, as well as finding my way under Lookout Landing, which I hadn't done up to this point, felt incredible. A burst of discoveries all at once that made for an unforgettable experience. My first time going to the Korok Forest, ascending to it from the dangerous, scary depths, expecting safety just to be greeted by a gloomy atmosphere, Koroks unmoving, not reacting, not saying a word, going inside the Deku Tree, defeating Phantom Ganon, for the 5th or so time at this point, but still, and restoring the Korok Forest to its usual playful nature. You also got a quest marker pointing directly to the Master Sword. Very nice. I liked this sequence. Oh, some of the shrines were also really fun, like this one shrine with lasers that reminded me of the Resident Evil 4 laser sequence. They also made these shrines into like mini Eventide Island style challenges. I had a lot of fun with those. Oh, and how could I forget my absolute favorite part of exploring in this game? The first time I walked into an abandoned Gerudo town, full of Gyptos and people hiding inside houses and below ground, implying something horrible had happened. Maybe a battle was fought right here on these now abandoned streets. The atmosphere of Gerudo town is near perfect. The feeling of wonder I experienced while first exploring the place can't compare to anywhere else in the game. And after you beat the region's dungeon, it changes back into a city that is vibrant and alive. I just love the world building of the region so much. But the dungeon that gets us here is, You thought this was a video essay critique of Tears of the Kingdom? You're wrong. I lied to you. It was all a trick. This is a tier list ranking the top 10 best Tears of the Kingdoms in Tears of the Kingdom list. Welcome to the top 5 dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom, ranked from best to worst. No, you don't count. The quest before reaching the Lightning Temple has you exploring the desert in a sandstorm with no access to a map, climbing up ancient desert structures and activating their light beacon thingies. It's a very fun section that got me lost and confused on what to do my first time around. I really liked it. And before you get to even get inside the dungeon, you fight the boss. I thought this was so unique and unexpected, and then when you finally do go inside, the Lightning Temple starts with you exploring abandoned crypts, solving puzzles while making your way to the dungeon's main room. I'm a really big fan of this first section. The fact that the puzzles are presented in these small, claustrophobic rooms means no space for rocketing your way around everything. They're genuinely clever and make use of Link's abilities. They're great! When you do make it to the main room, you're presented with the typical activate the thingies to proceed. And in the Lightning Temple, you only get 4. Well, 3 actually, considering one of them is 5 seconds away. You would think that this takes away from the experience, but I found it was quite the opposite. The dungeon isn't smaller than others in the game, it's actually one of the bigger ones. That means more puzzles and more sequences in between activating the objective points. It makes the progress you do make feel more important. I'm a fan of how they handle it here. Also, this dungeon gets my rocket rating of 0. The best possible score. No puzzle in this dungeon can be easily circumvented by spamming rockets. They all revolve around directing light onto switches, and with the way the dungeon is built, you can still ignore entire rooms if you like, or forgot they existed, like me. But it's not a mindless 5-second process of just spamming rockets. Just look at this janky way I solved the puzzle because my big brain forgot how to actually do it the intended way. That took effort and creativity. This is Tears of the Kingdom's game design working to make the game an experience unlike any other. The boss is also there. It's not bad. Zelda bosses have never been a highlight for me in any of the games. They're usually done in a minute or two, but Tears of the Kingdom actually does a good job making that not the case. Usually. And for this dungeon, the boss was a fun and challenging fight. The way up to the Stormwind Arc is better than the dungeon itself. Yeah, some of it can be rocketed, but the second half of the ascent is so incredible it makes up for it. These boat trampoline things are so fun to traverse through, and the view you get when you reach above the clouds, Wow, it is beautiful. When you reach the dungeon, however, things go downhill a bit. Just a bit, for now. There are still some fun puzzles like using these icicles to get a chest, but I found the dungeon to be mostly forgettable. Just brain off, going to each terminal and then boss. And the boss itself, actually, I love this guy. Dealing damage to the weak spots instead of normal health bar reminds me of how old Zelda bosses used to work. It makes for a more balanced experience. This could be your first or last dungeon and the difficulty of this boss would be more or less the same. The soundtrack accompanying the moment is fantastic and the boss is just fun to fight. This was the second best temple in the game, by the way. And while the build-up and boss are great, the temple itself is already forgettable. Yes, there was only one temple I actually consider good on its own. Oh my god, the build-up to the Fire Temple is the best build-up in the game. Take off that mask, go back up that mountain by rocketing your way up in 2 minutes, reach the top, experience a unique boss sequence on a flying ship. This is gaming right here. As you descend down Death's Mountain's chasm and see nothing but darkness and lava surrounding you, just to a couple minutes later get a glimpse of what feels like the biggest and coolest dungeon ever in the distance as you fight your way through monsters, setting up light routes along the way. This moment turned into a highlight of my playthrough. Wanna know what the opposite of a highlight is though? The Fire Temple itself. Ugh, so much wasted potential. This is a huge structure with minecart railings all over the place. This could have been a dungeon to get lost in, figuring out each puzzle, climbing up the floors using the rails and the atmosphere of the place. It's incredible! Sadly, this dungeon gets my rocket rating of 10, meaning it's all worthless. You're at the first floor, you need to reach the puzzle all the way at the end of the dungeon. One rocket takes you there. Trouble with any of the traversal puzzles, a rocket solves it all. I mentioned just the rocket because it's the easiest one to use. It doesn't even require building anything. But if you have like 2 fans and a battery, you can get anywhere just the same. The dungeon's boss keeps the trend of good bosses going. I like fighting it. Breaking its legs with a boulder and smacking it in the eyeball repeatedly was satisfying. I like the arena too, and the boss designs of this game are really good. But we're getting into a point now where the dungeons are seriously starting to get really broken. Not even Breath of the Wild let you climb the walls inside dungeons. What were they thinking? What? Seriously, what happened here? My first time playing this area's dungeon questline, I completely skipped the Ancient Waterworks part, which actually is a really cool and well-designed section that would have been really great to experience, but I never found that out because the game puts a shiny light in the middle of the room, and I go, ooh, shiny! I use a rocket to get in, I get out, I never knew this was a big area. What the fluff? Oh, but it gets worse. Yes, it gets worse. The entire dungeon ascent, all the Sky Islands, the entire thing. It's slow, there's no incentive to go through it, a balloon is enough to make it from start to finish in under a minute. If the Switch survives the flight, that is. And then the water temple itself is just a set of floating islands that look the exact same as the ones you've already seen on your way up here. The puzzles? Nothing even remotely interesting. The waterworks was more water temple than the water temple. At least here they got this spinny thingy. Whoa! Whoa! You can also beat every enemy here by just jumping, so there's no threat here. Yes, that does include the boss, which is the only bad one in the game. It looks funny, but again, jump and you get infinite bullet time, so it's not a threat at all. And when it is hard to kill, it's for the worst reason possible. It's just annoying to catch up to him. Hit him in its face. Please die. Please die. The dungeon has no atmosphere at all. It just feels like normal Sky Islands, but fish themed. I know the water temples get a bad rep in the Zelda fandom, but this one is easily the worst. Now, I know I said I was going in order of best to worst dungeons. I lied. Again. Kinda. The Spirit Temple is the worst dungeon in the game. Period. It just is. It's so bad in fact that you don't even gain a dungeon map. The entire thing takes place in the familiar looking mines of the depths you've seen countless times at this point in your playthrough. The reward for completing it? A mech that is so underpowered that you're better off just fusing a toenail to your wooden bat and whacking all the enemies yourself. A boring 5-minute walk in the mech, where it's just better to ignore it completely and fly over everything because god damn it Nintendo, you gave us a mech and made it boring and powerless. How is that even possible? But I kinda liked it. This dungeon is, like all the others, accessible from the start of the game. But unlike the other dungeons, you don't get a quest marker pointing you straight to it. You get nothing. And it stays that way until you've beaten every other dungeon in the game and done a big quest involving multiple locations. But you're never required to do any of it. In fact, the sense of exploration, the best and most important part of open world Zelda, that's what leads you to it. You see these thundering clouds in the distance, different from any other sky islands in the map. You're called to it, make a machine and fly to it yourself, no expectations. Fight your way through the rainy, thundering islands with no visibility, mapping out the region in your head until you find it. A shrine, a blessing, fitting reward for exploration as established by the game up until this point. But this time, it's not over. There's a door, and 10 hearts are needed to open it. You have just enough and you see a strange mask on a pedestal. You pick it up, boom. Main quest progression. Now that's intriguing. We follow the light, it unlocks the way down to the construct factory in the depths, and we see what seems to be a mechanical creature with parts missing. You get told you're talking to the Sage of Spirit, 4 pointers appear, and you realize you just found a dungeon. The excitement, the sheer joy of this discovery overtakes you. The dungeon, it's integrated right onto the open world. You finish its objectives and are awarded with a cool looking mech. The only different power from any dungeon, not just a spirit to follow you around, but a machine you can control yourself. You make your way inside the temple, fight what is in my opinion the coolest boss in any dungeon, and you're even rewarded with 3 cutscenes that are unique, finally! Having a sage talk directly to Link for once was a nice change of pace. Open world Zelda at its best. The Spirit Dungeon goes all the way, and in my opinion, it's better for it. It doesn't try to pretend to be an old school dungeon, it doesn't pretend to be a big incredible area filled with puzzles that make you go through a character's storyline as it builds up to a climax that's just underwhelming every time. It just is. It's a dungeon, or it barely is one, but just in breaking from the expected, in leaving for but a second the same story structure as Breath of the Wild, we found the ultimate reward for exploration and a fulfilling experience despite the content of the dungeon itself being by far the most lacking out of any present in the game. So it's the best worst one. Kinda like the game. The first time I went down beneath Hyrule Castle early game, I was still under the impression this game would follow a different structure from Breath of the Wild. And the very first thing my cat brain was attracted to after the intro sequence was the chasm beneath Hyrule Castle. So, the first thing I did after jumping off of my first Skyview tower was head directly into the chasm. It was only when I was spoiled on 2 of the bosses from 2 dungeons I had yet to explore on my own that the feeling of dread washed over me as I realized that I had just gone through the game's final sequence when I had not meant to do so early. It can be argued that just as in Breath of the Wild, having the freedom to do this is a positive, and much like in that game, its open world freedom first approach leads to brilliant moments while exploring and discovering what this immense world has to offer. But this is my video, and my feelings, and my experience with the game. And what I felt when I was spoiled on 2 bosses that could have been a part of those brilliant discovery moments, on top of realizing at that very moment I had 4 quest markers on my map for each of the 4 dungeons, and I had just went to the center of the map and found the final boss, the exact same sequence of quests that I had already grown used to after replaying Breath of the Wild countless times in the past 6 years. My sense of wonder for what awaited me in this brand new experience was shattered. It died right here. And it's most likely why the things that left the biggest impact on me were outside of Breath of the Wild's usual structure. They were not related to the 4 main dungeons whatsoever, because that to me became immediately predictable at this moment. But that's not a fault of the area itself, and replaying this game now, my appreciation for the conclusion has only grown larger to the point where I can confidently say, this is one of my favorite conclusion sequences in the series, going deep below Hyrule Castle's tunnels, deeper than any other point in the map, while enemies surround you at all sides. You see these structures built by the Kingdom of Hyrule centuries ago, abandoned and forgotten, all leading to the imprisoning chamber where Ganondorf spent thousands of years locked away, the Scourge of Hyrule, the land's source of malice, responsible for countless unending calamities throughout the ages. And as you reach the Gloom's lair, approaching the evil you sought out to defeat, you fight alongside the 5 sages, defeating the Demon King's army of evil minions until you find yourself face to face with Ganondorf himself. What ensues is the best Ganondorf fight ever.
rampant. It would have been more satisfying to overcome a worthy foe.
His demeaning and cocky behavior towards Link, while being extremely threatening, taking away hearts permanently and being close to unbeatable without food that heals your gloom hearts. The fact he uses the same types of armament as Link, he can even use Link's Flurry Rush. It feels like an even match. Now, Breath of the Wild had a cool ending sequence, fighting against Beast Ganon and all. However, Tears of the Kingdom last cinematic sequence leaves Breath of the Wild's attempt at an epic conclusion feeling like nothing but a taste for what was to come. The ending fight against the Demon Dragon is the most epic sequence in all of Zelda's history. The music, the atmosphere, the game's art style is shining through, providing us with the most beautiful looking shots the Nintendo Switch has ever displayed to its little 720p screen. All of this contributes to a conclusion that had me tearing up and emotional. For all the game's flaws, at this moment I was thinking to myself, this is the best Zelda game. And then Zelda gets revived, which ruins the point of the story. Seriously, there was no precedent for this. Not even a hint. I thought it was a sacrifice. That's what made the last sequence so impactful. Why did they do this at the end? Why must you be like this? For every 11 out of 10 ingenious gameplay mechanic, there's a baffling story decision. This game is so good, and yet so frustratingly bad sometimes that I have no idea how to judge it anymore. It's a 10 out of 10. It's right there. Just grab it, accept it. No! Why are you like this? I don't understand you. I guess there's no point in making sense of the madness. I must appreciate what the game does right. The fun it provided me. All the moments where it had me smiling, it had me immersed in its world. Its crazy world. I must accept reality. This is the way things are now. Need to just let myself go. I'm the Sage of Rockets!